Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce. I wish I was sitting here under better terms to talk with you on this Sunday night with my guy, the Juice Man himself. But unfortunately, the Cubs drop another one in extras, and they lose the series to the Cardinals when things were looking up. I remember, I think it was the show you and I were on. We were talking. I said if the Cubs go 5-4 on this 9-game homestand, it would be a success. They got within one game of that. They ultimately go 4-5 thanks to tonight's loss. But before we dive into all the action, Juice, my friend, how are you this evening?
I wish I could say it was better. Had to check out my ears before we jumped on here. They were bleeding from the Sunday Night Baseball broadcast. I hope I never hear the C team ever again. They were god-awful tonight, almost as bad as the result of the game, which is saying something. Yeah, they lost this series. I hate Donovan, Bader, all those long-haired fucks. I can't stand any of them. I don't know. I hate Bader more than anybody. For God's sake, the guy sucks against everybody else.
Except
and he plays the Cubs, and he's like fucking Babe Ruth. Yeah, fuck him. Fuck the Cardinals. Then again, I always get mad when they lose these series, and then I think, man, at least I don't live in St. Louis. So
that's one way to put it, my friend. But I'm right there with you, dude. Like Bader and Donovan are the bane of my existence after this 5-game series. Thank God it's over, at least for a little while. First and foremost, Miss Lil Yumper, evening to you, sir. How are you? But dude, I mean, kind of an interesting weekend. Cubs started things off really hot. 6-1 win with Schwarmer just looking sensational in game 1 on Saturday. We got to see the Killian debut. Obviously, no decision for him. Gives up the 3 runs. They ultimately come back and tie it. But overall, nice start to Killian's career, I would say, of all things with his debut. And then obviously tonight, I think the one that probably stings the most, the Cubs going up on the P.J. Higgins hit late and then just pissing it away. Before ultimately needing extras to decide tonight's game, and they lose in extras. Final score of 5-3. 2 nights in a row where the Cubs just get screwed in extras by the Cardinals. Going into Saturday's second game, it was 3-3. They lose 7-4 tonight. Going in 3-3, they lose 5-3. Juice, just what the hell went wrong, man?
Yeah, if you're gonna draw up how to win this game, They absolutely did all the things except for kick Wainwright out the gate. I mean, they really, squandered a lot of opportunities early, and he can't do that because once he gets comfortable out there, it's just going to be zeros until you can get to the bullpen. And they have a lot of guys that they bring out of that pen that throw hard. And after that, it was just. But Steele, I tweeted yesterday. I said Steele's got to throw 7 today because the bullpen was it was cashed tonight. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot for why we saw Wick struggle. They mentioned it on the broadcast, maybe the only positive of the broadcast tonight. I mean, they acted like Hader was the second coming of Willie Mays or Bader was the second coming of the Willie Mays catch when he dove. He's like, oh, it saved a double. I'm like, what kind of double was saved by him running in by 10 steps and dive? Sunday Night Baseball has got to do something about their broadcast because every time that they do something, it's the groups just don't work. They don't do enough research on at least like when you watch an NFL broadcast, like the guys, even the bad like lower end runs on Fox, like those guys do their homework. And I know it's one game per week, but let's be honest, Sunday Night Baseball is the same thing. You should be ready for that team that comes through with more than just bad the last couple nights. I mean, even Fox was bad yesterday, and I like Adam Amin, but AJ Pierzynski is god awful, and the Sunday Night Baseball crew brings no excitement to the game at all. I personally look at all that and the way they booked it. Why are you booking a rivalry game in the middle of the NBA Finals? You got lucky it was a blowout, so maybe some guys turned it off and went over to that. But why? Why are you putting Cubs Cardinals in competition with the game 2 of the NBA Finals? Like, do you really want to grow the game? Like tonight, there were so many things on the baseball field that pissed me off, but like as a baseball fan in general, when you put that like that crap lazy product out there where they don't do the extra homework and they don't talk about things that like me and you talk about, or I'm sure there's Cardinal podcasts out there that are, diving even just as deep as we are into the team. Like it's pure laziness. And I'm just over it because I think baseball is already behind the 8 ball and doesn't, draw in the young fan or the average new fan. They don't grow. And I mean, what's the average age for baseball? I thought at one point it was like 55 was like the average baseball fan age of people who, voted that they religiously watch. Putting those guys in the booth is not going to help your cause. No. So that was just one thing of tonight's game that I watched, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? Two, the fact that the Cubs just continue to be just baffled by Adam Wainwright is just so frustrating to me. It's going to be 2045, and I tweeted this too, and Wainwright will still be throwing 7-inning shutouts. It's like, I get it. Like, he's crafty, but not every swing needs to be like, I got to hit this ball on a wavelength. No, just poke it through. And today was it was so frustrating because it seemed like any time that they did shorten their approach, it was right at somebody or somebody. The Cardinal defense made a great play. It was frustrating tonight to sit and watch the game because I think and I've told you this before, these always hurt so much more to me when they play the Cardinals and they don't play well. If you're a true Cub fan, you feel the same way. You have that hatred for them. And they do it with guys that you don't even know who they are until they're on the team, and you're like, man, I hate Donovan. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy how they're able to develop, and it pisses me off to no end.
Juice, we talk about it all the time. I literally make the joke. I'm like, I want to be the team that can bring up some no-namer that just torches somebody and be happy about it, because this is exactly what we deal with as Cubs fans. It's all these no-name slapdicks that the Cardinals bring up that constantly, all the freaking time, just beat the crap out of the Cubs. Harrison Bader's a perfect example, right? He's at best, maybe a 105 WRC plus player overall in his career. Against the Cubs, he looks like the second coming of the next best thing since sliced bread, and it just doesn't make sense. Brendan Donovan's a perfect example. I didn't know who the guy was prior to this series. Guess what? Now I want to put his face on my dartboard that I can see from where I'm sitting right now, because this is just what the Cardinals do. And this is why I think the Cubs hatred, at least for us Cubs fans, runs so deep, and why I just want this Cubs team to produce talent like the Cardinals do, because every single freaking year we see this, right? They bring up some guys that we never heard of in our entire lives, and they always kick the shit out of the Cubs. And then they end up going on and doing good things, because this Cardinals team is always competitive somehow for no freaking reason. So literally that's exactly what it was. And going back to your point about Wainwright, like 7 innings, 9 hits, he gives up the 2 earned, 2 walks. He didn't strike out a single person tonight, and yet still made quality work of the Cubs. And I think that's what pisses me off so much. And continuing what pisses me off so much, Juice, little Cardinals rant here. Lars Nootbaar, are you kidding me? Yes, the dude sounds like a fucking General Mills product. Never have heard of him in my entire life. I would expect to look for his product in the exact same section as Fig Newton's. And guess what? He somehow manages to beat the Cubs up, because that's just what these no-name Cardinals do. And that's why it's so frustrating. And like, I think that's why it made Saturday's first game so exciting, right? They won, right? They beat them handily. Schwarber looked great. And then the second game, you have a chance, and then late innings, they get you in the extras. And then tonight, they do the exact same thing. And that's what's frustrating, right? Like you said, like, this is what's frustrating about these games, is because it is the Cardinals. It is like, oh, the Cubs are right there, right? It feels that way, right? It's like, oh, you're right there. You almost had it. It's the dude on the freaking, what is it, the Geico or Progressive or whatever.
Yeah, with the dollar.
Yeah, almost. You got to be quicker than that. Like, that's how it feels right now, being the Cubs against these Cardinals, because they bring up nobody. They play well. And when it comes down to crunch time, to, whatever they got to do, whether it's tonight with, being down going into the ninth inning, or if it's, Saturday's second game where you're tied going into extras, whatever it be, especially after the Cubs battled back, they still find a way to hurt the Cubs every single time, and it drives me nuts. And I'll agree with this. We'll bring this back up to fruition here, because why not? A little Yumper. It doesn't hurt that they got Nolan Arenado for nothing. I want to know, why do teams in the MLB constantly help the Cardinals? I don't get
it. First of all, the Rockies, it made no sense for them to trade and then get Chris Bryant, right? I mean, after that, why?
Scott
it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I always say, you got to find the sucker at the poker table, right? Like the guy who doesn't know what the hell he's doing, doesn't know where he's going, and that's who you take your money from, right? If they're able to do that better than anybody, and they're able to scout talent a lot better than anyone else, yeah, they're gonna do it. I don't know. I'm getting so frustrated watching these games because, like you said, with the dollar thing, it's small little things. It's not. I know they need a lot more pieces to contend for a division. That's just me. I think that, down the line, if you're looking at the prospects, you got to have 3 or 4 of them succeed, come up, have good big league careers, and then you're probably going to have to add, 2 or 3 pieces within free agency if it's not pitchers, position players, bullpen slots, whatever. But yeah, I look at the team now and I'm like, all right, compete. And they do. That's the thing that I do love about this team.
Yeah.
They have a lot of young guys who don't know how to win yet, but they do come out every night and compete. They're in a lot of the games but it's frustrating because it's a matter of, since they're so young, they don't do the little things to win ball games. You know what I mean? Was it last night with getting the bunt down? I think that was last night, getting the bunt down to get the guy to third. That happened, with PJ Higgins, right? He popped up the bunt, I believe. You got to get that down. The game's over if you're able to get that bunt down. Tonight, it's Frazier coming off the bench and not being able to put the ball in play. Yeah, that's tough to come in cold and hit. But hey, man, you got to put it in play. Literally anywhere that you put it in play, the runner has a chance to score. He has no chance if you swing through it. Put it in play. And some of his swings earlier on in the bat, I'm like, why are you trying to park this thing? Just find anywhere. Just anywhere within, the infield's in. It's those little things, and then, you allow, it's the littlest, getting Bader, not letting him hit a triple, getting the leadoff guy when you're in a save slot. That happened against the White Sox as well. They let the leadoff guy on in later innings, and that guy usually comes around to score when teams are fundamentally sound like the Cardinals are. It was a good weekend because we got to see Caleb Killian, right? We got to see him have a good start, I think, for his career. He showed some things. He got a taste, and I think that's for the future, that'll keep him working at Iowa. He knows what he has to do now. He knows, situational, what, different pitch sequences and things like that. It's great. The frustrating part is as a Cub fan, we're so in this mold of compete. And the Cubs essentially at the trade deadline downshifted so quick and now, since I know they bought Stroman, and that's great, and they brought in some other guys too, but now it's you got to add more pieces. What's the timeline? And I think that's what's so frustrating for Cub fans right now, because it's going to hinge on a lot of the prospects developing and who they're able to convince to be this first domino piece in a new rebuild kind of new Cub era. There was just an article, they were referencing it during the broadcast about the Cubs being a major player for one of the top 3 shortstops in next year's free agent class. That's great. but you're going to have to convince any of those guys to start over with this team that we don't know the timeline for. Now, if you buy more during free agency next year, maybe that gets you into the conversation. Maybe.
Right.
But you are still laying it on the backs of guys like PCA, Triantos down the line. You know, your Brendan Davis to come back from the back surgery and be healthy and be the 5-tool player we think he is. Because, like they said, you're going to have to find guys like the Cardinals have to fit with Arenado and with Goldschmidt. You can go out and get Carlos Correa or Bogarts or Turner. None of it matters if Joe Schmo's behind him and he's hitting 198. None of it matters. So, yeah, I just think that, like, we watch these games and the frustrating part is they are so close in these games. But the closeness to me doesn't mirror the future either. You know what I mean? It's what does it mean for the future of the Cubs? Who is the core? Who is this group of pillars that you're surrounding this team, these guys that you're bringing in free agency with? And I think we have a decent idea. Killian, I think, is going to be in that mix as a starter. But I think the frustrating part is to sit here, 50, what were we, 40% through the season almost, and say, I feel confident that next year this prospect, other than Caleb Killian, will be up with the team. Think about it. I mean, there's a lot of guys now that you can go through this minor league system and think, yeah, they're going to be good, but they're going to need so much time. So now with this new story coming out, it's almost like, yeah, you got a lot of convincing to do to get any of these guys who are, probably championship chasing to believe, right? Who's that first domino to fall?
Yeah, and I agree with you, Juice, and Lil Yumper right out the gate here in the show. This is from earlier, but he says, don't believe how people think this team is just a piece or two away. Because I agree. I think this team is more than a piece or two away, right? Like, you're seeing the building blocks. And I think that's why this team, like you said, is fun to watch. They don't quit because they are young, and there are the Christopher Morels, and there are the Nico Horners, and there are, some of these guys that inspire hope and make things exciting. But at the same time, you kind of wonder, and this is something too that, like, and Lil Yumper, I'm not calling you out if you're watching this live along with us here, because I went on a pretty fun rant, and you can check that out on YouTube if you haven't seen it yet, on Friday's show about the whole, like, trade Stroman on his current contract thing. Here's the problem. Is when you do things like that, and I'm just saying, because so here's Lil Yumper's comment to just play off what Juice is saying. I don't see a reason to keep Stro and Hendo, he's saying Hendricks, with their current contracts. And here's where my argument flips. And but when you don't have those guys and you're banking on prospects, you're kicking the can further down the road. How far are you trying to kick the can down the road, banking on prospects for things to play out, right? Like, yes, you do need prospects to come along and be good, right? You need the PCAs, and you need the, Ed Howards and the Triantos and, the Braylon Marquezes of the world. You need those guys to come in and at least just fill a role. They don't need to be a superstar. They need to fill a role. But at the same time, you're going to have to buy talent at some point. The Cubs did it. They bought John Lester, right? They bought Jason Hayward. Yes, in hindsight, we're all looking at that contract, hating it, but at the time, it made a lot of sense for them to go out and get an elite Gold Glove right fielder. That's something they absolutely needed. And they got hella fucking lucky when they developed Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez. At the time, Addison Russell. I know he became a scumbag, but it is what it is. Kyle Schwarber, right? Like, they got a lot of those guys. They traded for Dexter Fowler. They traded for an Arrieta. They traded for a Miguel Montero. They developed Wilson Contreras. Like, they didn't just develop all those guys. They had to buy some talent. They're going to still have to do that. And I think a guy like Stroman, who doesn't thrive on velocity, thrives on contact and movement. And I think Hendo is that way to an extent too. You still need those guys while developing that talent, because you can trade your veteran talent every trade deadline, right? You could keep trading it. But at what point do you stop trading talent because your prospects don't pan out? Not every prospect pans out. And I'm glad for the sake of the argument here, Yumper, drop it back in. This is the reason I say it because they're signed 2 to 3 years. I don't want to trade, but Jed created the situation, not adding more to lay the foundation. Say, Stroh contracts were all that was done. Sure. But you also can't make a championship team in one offseason. The Cubs didn't do that. Like Rizzo came along in what, 2011, 2012? I mean, he came along pretty early in the process. Then you had Bryant later. Then you had Baez, who was already there. You had Wilson, who was already there, right? They went and bought Lester in 15. They went and added a guy like Hayward in 16. You don't build a championship team in one offseason. That's just the case, right? The moves, in my opinion, of a Seiya and a Stroh are trying to set the foundation for more moves down the road. Right? Like, again, it's a balance. It's all a balance. And I think that's I think that's just where people need to realize is like, yes, I agree. Like, I'm right there with you, Juice. Like, this team, they have some good. There's a lot of bad still. There's a lot of things they need to fill. But it's like, but at the same time, how far down the road are you going to kick the can metaphorically here until you're just banking on prospects? And what if they don't work? Then you just immediately accelerate the rebuild longer. That's all I'm saying. It's
I agree.
I think a lot of Cubs fans are just are valuing prospects too much.
I find myself in the middle of both of this conversation. Like, I understand Yumper's side of it, and I understand your side of it. I just wish, and this is the only thing, either way, pick a lane, but let your fan base know which lane you're in. You know what I mean? And I think we're going to figure that out come the trade deadline, because I think depending on who's let go and brought back for prospects and what prospects are brought back. Are they prospects that are closer to the major league level, or are they, high A, 19-year-olds? Like, yes, that will be, at that point, it'll definitely be known that the Cubs are probably closer to their Theo rebuild. And that's the only thing that kind of irks me. It's like Theo came in with a plan and said, hey, this is what we're doing. He let the fan base know the minute he got there in that first press conference, hey, man, I have to redo all scouting. I have to redo all the things and all the processes that we do here. And then I got to bring in talent. And then that talent's got to sit there and develop for, 4 or 5 years. And they developed quicker than probably he even thought that. Yeah. And I think I've read that they didn't expect to be there in 15. No. They started the 1080 project at Wrigley, 1080, I think that was the name of it, to, fix Wrigley Field. And in the middle of it, nobody expected them to make the playoffs that year and play games at Wrigley. They had to move back the renovation process because of that. So I just wish Jed had more Theo in him in that way. Like, just tell me the plan. Tell me what it is. If you truly think that, this team is, I don't think 2 or 3 pieces, but if you think you could find 4 or 5 pieces, in a mini window before you have these younger guys who come up to fill it, then find the contracts that make sense and fill those holes. And then when those guys are up, you could let them walk and bring up your Triantos that maybe he's ready, or Ed Howard or whatever.
Right.
The guys that were further down the line. I just wish that there was more transparency. And I think that when you do things like that, you build so much trust from your fan base. And they haven't done that, for a long time. Even the back years of the Theo run were like, what's going on? Now, this kind of plays against my I hate Tommy Ricketts, point, because I try to stay out of those as much as I can, because I do think it's twofold. I think that there's a lot of bad things that happen to the business, during COVID and things like that. But I start to see the other side of it when, the Cubs are a big market team. Spend. They should. They bring in tons of money every year. The biggest thing that hurt me this week is how many Cardinal fans were at Wrigley this weekend. You could definitely hear the Yachty chants over drowning the Cub fan chants. And I think that that's an indication of how frustrated Cub fans currently are. Then the question starts to become, how long can you drag this out on your fan base? That's the next move. We're sitting here with some of us with patience, like, hey, we get it. The farm is stocked. It's going to be, we're going to have some guys come up. But it's also like some people are very spoiled in this Cubs run. And ready to, all right, hey, I gave you your, year off. Maybe they'll give them this year, but next year, I don't know if a lot of fans will spend money, consistently to watch this again, considering the fact that the Cubs are, a top 3 franchise in baseball. So I think it's hard to play that juggle game, but I also, too, I think it's easier to play that juggle game when you set expectations for your fan base. So Jed, I think, needs to do that in some capacities. And I hope that this is the quiet time before the trade deadline, and then we'll have a plan, because maybe him exposing it now makes him the guy who is showing his cards at the table, like we talked about earlier. But with that said, the Cubs aren't going to win their division or make the playoffs probably. So, you'd be a fool not to know that the Cubs have pieces that are probably willing to part with right now. So when this trade deadline's over, I expect Jed to come out and say, hey, this is our plan, and this is how we're going to execute it. And if he doesn't, you start to kind of question, the basis and the processes that Theo put in place. Are they still there? Being honest with the fan base, giving them a direction, a known moment of when, hey, get excited because Cubs baseball is back. And I think the hardest thing right now is we're in the middle of it. We're in between it. We don't know. It's the unknown. And I think as a Cub fan, that scares us. It somewhat makes me excited, because I am, excited to see which way they go with this, because I do think it was time to turn the page on the last core. And I think this season's kind of shown that a little bit, considering, their success elsewhere. But I want transparency. And I don't think, as a Cub fan who spends his hard-earned money to go to games, that is too much to ask for.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And Lil Yumper jumped back in the comments. I'm not sharing it up on the screen for those that are listening at home, but he agreed, right? Like he said, it's pick a lane and tell the fans. And I agree. I think that's where the confusion is with this team right now. It just isn't in a general sense of yeah, you feel like you are still quite a few pieces away, but you try to give the illusion that you're there to compete, right? And it's just pick a lane. I think that's why everybody respected the hell out of Theo, was because he was honest. Hey, it's going to take us a couple of years. They were a little ahead of schedule, and they made it, and they got it done. But at the same time, a series like this humbles you very, very much so, in the sense of, what is this team? Where are things going? Because again, the Cardinals get the best of the Cubs. Only 3 out of 5 for the Cardinals. It's not like they swept the Cubs in the 5-game series, but still, especially when the Cubs had a chance, when you really think about it, to take 4 or 5 from this Cardinals team, and they end up losing the series, I think that's where it's most frustrating. So, Juice, before we put this absolute gong show of a series in the rearview mirror,
and thank God.
Do you have? Yeah, and thank God, I agree. Do you have any final thoughts about this Cardinals series?
I think it was really fun to watch Caleb Killian. That's my final thought for the series. If you're going to hold on to something from this weekend, and I know that they won this week, obviously it's 5-game set. They won 2 baseball games. That's great. But at the end of the day, we learned that kid can pitch, and at this level. And once he figures it all out, he's going to be so scary. He was very nervous. You could tell he missed a lot of his spots. He didn't have the best control, and he still, for 3-4 innings, looked unhittable.
Yeah,
unhittable. So it's a testament to him. It's a notch in the belt for the Cubs for being able to pull him back in the Bryant deal, because I think that's been the Achilles heel for this front office for a long time now, developing pitching. But that was a very impressive first start. I enjoyed watching him pitch. I got a lot of 2003, not Mark Pryor vibes, but when you're bringing up starters vibes. We watched Zambrano pitch, we watched Pryor pitch, obviously carried through in 98, but just that kind of feeling that we haven't had in a very long time, because Kyle Hendricks was a lot different than that. They traded for Jake Arrieta, but having, a prospect like that who is young, controllable for a very long time, I think is something that shouldn't be understated. I know we talked about a lot of bad and what's the direction, but I am comfortable with that kid's future as a Cub, and it was a very impressive debut. All things said, he only, 5 innings there or 6 innings there he ended up going?
5.
Yeah, but with that said, to have the stuff he had out there and to still get through 5 on a pesky Cardinal lineup. Let's definitely, state that they're a team that is very pesky. They put the ball in play pretty often. I thought was pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, I completely agree. And my final thoughts, I'm going to build off what you said, Juice, with Killian. I enjoyed watching Killian. I very much enjoyed the fact that he came out in the 4th. He got banged up a little bit, and they let him go back out in the 5th, and he settled down. Yep. I think that's such a huge deal, especially in your first start, right? Because you could go back out there in the 5th and just be rattled, just be all over the place, let up a couple more runs, let it really get out of hand. No, he locked it down, kept it a 2-run game. And the Cubs ultimately did come back and tie it. Sure, they blew it in the extra innings, but they still came back and tied it. And I think that's so key. And to your point, Juice, right, with Killian, I'm gonna sit on the laurels of what was said on the broadcast. There were many people in that Giants front office that literally said, we do not want to give up Killian in this trade. And on the Cubs, on the flip side, said the only way you get Chris Bryant is if we get Caleb Killian. That shows how highly regarded he was by both organizations, right?
Yeah.
The team, not only the organization that drafted him, but the team that ultimately ended up with him. And you also, I don't know if anybody remembers this, and it kind of flew under the radar. So if you don't remember this, it happened. I promise you it happened. Carter Hawkins was down in Iowa, in Des Moines, AAA. I believe it was a day of a Killian start. I think he was there to sit there and scout him. And they interviewed him afterwards, and he said, he was like, I tried to get this kid when I was in Cleveland. He's like, and I ended up in Chicago and we had him. Mm-hmm. He is highly regarded by baseball. And there is a fucking reason. We have a 97-mile-per-hour sinking fastball. Yeah. You're scary. Again, like you said, Juice, he was all over the place. He was probably nervous, but you still went 5 innings. You only gave up 3 earned on, I think it was only 3 hits. He walked 2 and he struck out 6. That's a pretty good debut for being not hitting your spots and maybe a little wild. Like, and I said this time and time again beforehand when we talked about it, right? Like, this is weeks ago, right? When we were talking about the idea of him coming up. Hey, he comes up, he learns, right? It's a learning experience. You come in, what works, what doesn't. Like you said, pitch sequence, things like that. You take that back with you, you hone that in Iowa. And then when you're back for good, when maybe Wade Miley and Drew Smyly are traded at the deadline, that's when you start to build on that. And then you roll in the next season as Caleb Killian, certified starting pitcher of these Cubs, and potentially a forward-looking ace-type pitcher in this Cubs rotation. So I'm right there with you, Juice. That was 100% the highlight of the weekend. Also, hell yeah, Matt Swarmer, keep it going, kid.
Yeah, that just kid to root for.
It gives me Cardinal vibes. Again, we were talking about why we hate this team because they bring up no-namers. Matt Swarmer's our no-namer that came up and rocked the Cardinals, and it felt very poetic, and I thoroughly enjoyed that myself personally, Juice. But Juice, before we get out of here, we will go ahead and preview the next game. Cubs have an off day on Monday, so everybody enjoy the day off and get your mind right because it was a brutal week. It was a lot of baseball in a little amount of time. But the Cubs are in action on Tuesday, June 7th. They will be in Baltimore, Maryland at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. It'll be a 6:05 start Central Daylight Time as the Cubs take on the Baltimore Orioles. It'll be Keegan Thompson on the bump for the Cubbies. That 1.99 ERA is cool and tough, especially with a 6-0 record. They will be going against Kyle Bradish. He's a right-handed pitcher with a 1-3 record, 6.82 ERA, and 35 Ks on the season. So, Juice, give me a little bit of your thoughts, a little preview for this 2-game set with the Orioles starting on Tuesday, and we'll circle back then for a Fly the W play before we get out of here. But your thoughts, my friend?
Well, you lost, 3 out of the 5 here in this series. Go out to Baltimore and win. Just lay it all on the line. I think it's a good day to have an off day tomorrow. I mean, they played 11 baseball games, in 9 days, and 4 of them went to extra innings. Yeah, that's tough. It's a lot of baseball. I hope they go home tonight, get some rest, put the tonight's ball game in the rear view, the series in the rear view as well. But yeah, just be nice to stack some more wins and just just be good to see them like take steps to getting healthy too. It's just been such a whirlwind worth of call ups, send downs. Be nice to see them like have a pretty normal roster, and get some. I also too like I want to see more at bats for guys like Rivas. I feel like he's been a strictly defensive replacement for a while here. And I'm starting to think like, why hasn't he just been sent down then? You start to kind of, he's got to play,
Right.
If you're going to use him that way, I'm sure there's some guy who's out, in the shining shoes or whatever, working behind, an Amazon warehouse that could play first base in the ninth, I would love to see this kid just get some at bats. So my preview for this series is I hope he gets at bats. That's I want to see him in the lineup, and I think he's gotten the short end of the stick in the last couple weeks, just with his playing time. And I want to see him succeed. I want to see him have some starts. But with that said, I don't know. The more and more Cubs baseball I watch, the less of him I see. So what's the point at this? You might as well just send him down so he can get at bats.
Yeah, I agree. It's very much a time in the season where you want to see what the direction is and who needs to play and who doesn't. And I'll tell you what, Juice, like for this coming series, this Orioles team is a team that's beatable. Go get 2 games real quick. You got an off day on Thursday too. Like go get some wins. That's only good for the development of this team. It helps them look good. And then you travel to New York. You got 3 games then with the best team in baseball and the Yankees over the weekend. So like gain some momentum because otherwise that trip to the Bronx is not going to be all kinds of fun. So I'll keep it short and sweet. Just go get some wins. Let's keep seeing what we've seen out of Christopher Morel. 20-game on base streak. Are you fucking kidding me? Like that's what you like to see. More from him, more from some of these other young guys, more Nico, more, the list goes on and on of what we want to see. But Juice, before we get out here, I do want to remind everybody, that we also have Fly the W payers. That's what I wanted to remind everybody. Who do you have as your Fly the W pick for this quick 2-game series with the Baltimore Orioles?
I'll take Wilson Contreras.
Ooh.
I haven't taken him in a long time, and I don't know, just gonna enjoy my time with the captain while I think he's still gonna be here, because I truly, the writing's starting to be on the wall, isn't it? I mean, he's having one of the best seasons he's had for his career. He's probably going to be an all-star. Yeah, just going to keep enjoying his at-bats while I can.
It's like the moment from Moneyball when they're trying to trade Pena and the assistant GM that's Jonah Hill goes, he's probably going to be an all-star. And he goes, he's probably going to be an all-star.
He's an all-star, David.
He's an all-star, David.
Right?
Yeah,
David Dombrowski, I think.
Because he was out for Detroit, right? It's like he's going to be an all-star, Dave, and it's like that's kind of how it feels with Willie. Like he is going to be an all. He's the best. He's the best offensive catcher in baseball, and it's not even close. So I think that's a good pick on your end, my friend. I'm going to go. See, this one's tough. But I feel like I got to ride a little bit of a hot hand in a sense. I'm going to go Christopher Morel. I'm just going to keep riding it. I want to see that on base streak continue. Like, honest to God, he could go like 1 for 3 each day. But if he's at a 22-game on base streak after Wednesday, like that's cool. That's cool and tough. And that's things we like to see as a Cubs fan base for him going forward. And we'll get Joey's pick, obviously, and we'll tweet that out ahead of Tuesday's game. When it's all said and done. But I do want to remind everybody this time that Cubs on Tap is the official Cubs podcast of the On Tap Sports Network. Check out all of our great work over at ontapsportsnet.com, at ontapsportsnet on social media. You can follow us at the podcast specific accounts. That's at Cubbies on Tap. That's Twitter and Instagram. I am at Loose on Tap on the Bluebird app. Juice is at Juice on Tap. You can follow at Joey Knows Nothing, at Teddy Freddy 270, and all the other great people that contribute to Cubs on Tap over here at On Tap Sportsnet. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, we got it all. You know the drill, Cubs fans. We all got friends that like the Southsiders. Send them over to our friends at Sox on Tap. Bets, golf, Chicago Wolves, Chicago Sky, you name it, we've got it. go ahead and check out ontapsportsnet.com, at ontapsportsnet on social media, the OnTap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports juice. It is always a pleasure, my friend. I wish we were talking on a series win terms. Unfortunately, is a series loss to the Cardinals, but everybody gets a well-needed off day coming up here on Monday, and then it's 2 with the Baltimore Orioles starting on Tuesday. But my friend, what do you say we get out here the only way we know how, at Cubs on Tap?
Extra fuck the Cardinals.
Fuck them, and let's go Cubbies.